So, I have a few things to say about the president's fourth and hopefully final State of the Union address. I'm not gonna go into anything in detail, I'm not gonna go into like any extrapolation. I'm just gonna get right to a few things. Number one, of course, like I said, everyone expected him to be some freaking blubbering idiot zombie. But I knew they've been prepping this guy for probably at least 2 months for this particular speech, because they don't actually send him out to do extended periods of time on live television where he's speaking, let alone taking questions from anybody. I'd be surprised if they even allow him to do a debate against Trump, because they didn't do it last time. They had COVID to blame last time, so I'm not sure what they'll use this time, but I'm sure they can find a way to avoid it. But the funny thing is that I knew he was going to be pretty well spoken. He's probably gone over this speech about 1,000 times. If I don't want to actually exaggerate, he's probably rehearsed it about 200 times at least. And that's probably a serious estimate. And he's probably had handlers just going over every aspect of it, from where the people in the crowd he needs to call on are going to be, and where he needs to kind of ad-lib some things and some suggestions for ad-libs or whatever like that. I mean, the guy is a professional politician who's been doing it for like 40 or 50 years, and you can't expect that as the president, with every resource available to you on the planet and prior knowledge of the date that this speech was going to happen, that somebody wasn't going to already have the shit written, already going to be ready to add any new stuff to it that they needed to, and already going to be running through it with this motherfucker constantly. So besides that fact, he did well. I mean, as far as presentation goes, I disagreed with a lot of the things he said. I thought a lot of the things he said were downright lies, and I'll get into probably like 2 or 3 of those right now. But to be honest with you, he's a pro politician, so of course he can put together a speech that he's prepped for. It doesn't speak to how well he could do live against actual commentary or questioning from people who aren't gonna, stump for him or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is that if he can prep for a speech like this, of course he's gonna deliver it. It's just a no-brainer. So the people who thought he was gonna just fall across the stage and fumble through the whole thing, I mean, it was a possibility, but I didn't really bet on it. The second thing I would say is, to begin with the things that I disagreed with. He jumped off the speech right away and demonized Roe v. Wade, or the overturning of Roe v. Wade by Trump and the Supreme Court. Now, it wasn't really Trump. He wasn't in office when it happened, but he put the pieces in place to make that decision possible. So Biden took his very first swing at Trump and blamed Trump for the overturning of Roe v. Wade pretty fairly, because it's pretty much Trump's fault, or Trump put it into motion by putting the right people on the Supreme Court while he was president. But he took a shot and he demonized the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and the first person he called on to support his claims was a woman who had struggled with getting pregnant, and then her and her husband did in vitro fertilization and finally were able to have a baby. And then whatever amount of time went by, they wanted to have another baby, and then for some reason, some sort of IVF law in whatever state that they live in had prevented them from being allowed to make another baby. So he was demonizing that and saying, reform IVF law, make sure it's available for everybody. Now, the problem that I have with that, and I could pretty much see it coming, is that all of these people tonight wore white in support of reproductive rights, specifically the right to abortion, since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And Joe Biden has done everything in his power, along with his friends in the Democratic states like California, New York, Oregon, and Washington, to make it available to people, even though the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade and the states have the right to make whatever law they want about it. And so if you live in a state that doesn't allow abortion for whatever reason, you want the abortion, and you go to another state to get it, I mean, not only are you crossing state lines to break a law, but you are the people who are supporting it are the people in the highest points of government, like the governors of these states, like the president and the vice president, like the congressmen and senators who support this kind of shit. So that's a horrible way to state your case in support of those kind of reproductive rights, by saying, oh, this person didn't have the ability to have another child because of reproductive rights laws. I'm like, are you kidding? You guys have killed like 75 million babies over the last 50 or 60 years. I mean, we could really repopulate America with all the abortions that have happened, and less than 1% of those abortions that have happened have been because of the things that you guys claim women need the right to abortions to, like incest or rape cases, or the possible death of the mother. I understand there's endoscopic pregnancies, and those are a literal subset of things that you can talk about making possible to get abortions for. But the huge majority of the abortions in the country are being performed on women who don't want to have a baby, or who had sex with the wrong guy, or who are too young, or who are porn stars or hookers or strippers or OnlyFans models, all kinds of shit like that. That's the vast, vast majority of the abortions that are coming. So, of course, predictably, like I just thought, the next person that he called on 1 minute later was a woman who wanted to have an abortion but lived in Texas. And he stated in the State of the Union address that he was glad that this woman was able to fly to another state to get her abortion, but that we need to allow all these women to have this. Like, that is a literal crime, dude. Like, especially by most states' definitions, but I think federally as well. So if a state that you live and reside in, that you have a residency and like an address and everything like that, you're subject to that state's laws. So if the state law says that you can't seek an abortion because you just aren't ready for a kid or whatever, if the state says the only reason you can have an abortion is a medical emergency or reason or something like that, and you say, I just don't want to have a baby, but I can't have an abortion anymore because of the Supreme Court ruling, so I'm gonna fly to another state, let's say California, I don't know if that's where she went, but let's say California, I'm gonna fly to another state to have that abortion and then come back to my home state. You still broke a law, right? Just because you did it in another state doesn't mean you didn't break a law. You, as a resident of that state, are subject to that state's laws. So that's an actual crime. And Biden actually flexed it in the very beginning of his inaugural speech. The second thing, and I only have like one more thing after this, but the second thing that bugged me the most was the fact that this guy is preaching that we need to allow cities to have more power to hire, local and public authorities like police officers and security guards, and allow more funding for places to crack down on like retail theft and auto theft and auto, crime and things like that. But under his laws, especially in California, Michigan, Massachusetts, New York, places like that that are extremely, Maryland, in Baltimore, it's really bad. Illinois, in Chicago, it's really bad. Places like that where, especially under his rule, those Democratic governors have taken full advantage and full swing on the laws that he has passed and the restrictions that he has passed on these police forces and on the establishments themselves to not be able to not only arrest these people, but prosecute them and actually charge them and get them jailed for the crimes that they've committed. They just get right out, or they don't even get arrested at all, or they don't even get jail time at all. It's been under his lead that these states have allowed that stuff, and then he has the nerve to say that we need to hire more police or we need to crack down on more of these crimes when he's the one who's allowed it. The third thing that tripped me out, and I got right to it because it's something that I was shocked that took him so long to talk about, but the border. I mean, he probably went an hour before he even mentioned it. And then the first thing he says is that we need more border security, that we need to be able to close the border, that we need to be able to protect our borders and things like that. Are you serious? You're the one who encouraged and allowed like 8 or 9 million people to cross under your one term as president. That's crazy. That's insane that that's what you're actually saying in the State of the Union address. And if I thought you were doing really well at just as an oratorial sense, and as playing your role as the Democratic president and doing all the things, saying all the things you're supposed to say because your side of the aisle is all there standing up and clapping for you. The State of the Union is the stupidest thing that we've ever invented for Republicans and Democrats. We all go watch it to suck the fucking president's dick and watch all his friends clap for him for doing all the things that they wanted him to do. But for you to say, after all the things that you did right, in my opinion, as far as what you're supposed to do as a president on the State of the Union, for you to say that it's Republicans that are getting in the way of you passing a border security bill because they don't want to vote for a bipartisan bill. Dude, you're insane, bro. The bill you're trying to get them to pass allows all kinds of bullshit to happen. And the bill you're trying to get them to pass, it's not really securing the border. In the border bill that you want to pass, the security measure that you have is being able to close the border if the influx of migrants is ever too much. Well, that only means closing the border crossings, like the legal crossings where people go and get inspected before they can come across the border. That doesn't actually close the hundreds or thousands of miles of open territory that is the actual stretching border of the United States and Mexico and other countries in South America that you don't want to protect or enforce or close because you stop the border wall and you won't allow ICE agents to do their job along those stretches. That's where the majority of these fucking migrants are coming through. They're not walking across a border crossing with gates and guards. They're going across the tundra. They're going across the desert. And then they're ending up in a border town. And they're burdening those border towns. And the only ones that you're actually seeing and counting are the ones that ICE agents or other law enforcement officers are catching and arresting, and most of the time just letting go. But there's many, many more that don't ever get an encounter with a law enforcement agent. And they're just floating around in this fucking nation now, burdening the citizens and the economies of the people that already live here and work here and have made families here and have lived here for generations. It's hard economically when an influx of hundreds of thousands or even millions of people inhabit a space that already only had enough resources for the people who already lived there. Imagine you have a barbecue and you have 12 steaks, because that's how many people you thought were coming to the barbecue. But all of a sudden, 12 more people show up to the barbecue and you have to feed everybody. Now you have two options. You either say, I'm only feeding the people who were already invited, not the people who just showed up randomly without an invitation or announcing themselves, or I'm going to split up these pieces into way smaller pieces and give them to these other people who weren't invited, who we didn't know were coming, and who didn't announce themselves and come nicely. They just fucking walked in the backyard and didn't even bother to knock on the front door. Those people we're supposed to fucking just split everything off with and burden everybody else who was already here, supposed to be here. That's the kind of analogy I want you guys to see. It's not just about, oh, we don't want these people here. Oh, we don't like these people. Oh, blah, 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 blah. They're rapists, they're drug dealers, whatever. There are rapists, there are drug dealers, there are cartel members, there are foreign nationals that aren't even South American. They're from the fucking Middle East or from Asia or from wherever else we have enemies. But besides all those things, it is a burden economically when that many people come into a space that is already inhabited by a certain amount of people. Do you think that every place in America has such a surplus, especially in smaller towns or stuff that are scattered across the border, to just be able to take in hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of new people who aren't working, who have nowhere to go, nowhere to stay, who have no money to help run the economy, and who also have no interest in learning the language, paying taxes, learning the laws of our land, gaining citizenship, learning about the history and culture of our nation. They want to bring their place here with no other thought of what's going on here. They don't want to mix with us. They want to come here and bring their shit here, and we should just let them stay and leave them alone. That is one of the biggest problems about this shit. So Biden, total miss tonight. I mean, of course you did your thing because you're a super long-term politician, but honestly, I'm so glad that, the things that the polls and everything are looking the way that they do. I'm still a little frightened because, you know, there's a lot of young voters in America now that don't see reason and wouldn't even bother to hear an opinion on the other side of the aisle. But I'm really hoping for a comeback this year. So hopefully this doesn't keep happening. State of the Union 2024. Wow, what a world.